And are you ready, Brock?
We're ready.
All right,
Let me get my screen up here. We've got too many things on top of this now. All right, cool. So we're talking about Instagram today. Go ahead, Brock.
No, go ahead, Ellie. You can set this up.
Yeah. So in our last meeting, we kind of proposed a few topics that we thought might be helpful. Instagram won by like one vote. So we're going to start with that. We're going to cover, first of all, why Instagram. If you're here, you're probably already on it or at least curious. But we'll kind of go into some of the benefits of Instagram on its own and, in comparison to some other platforms that are out there. We're going to go over your profile, how you can build that out and optimize it for your specific audience, understanding the algorithm, what factors go into that, and overall strategy. We'll go into growth on Instagram and how you can turn that into business, as well as some analytics you can keep an eye on to kind of track your growth. We'll get into a couple of examples and some things to watch, and then we'll open up to any questions. Also, feel free to chime in throughout with questions. Anything else, Brock?
No, I don't think so. I think that's great.
Cool. And I'll let you start us off here.
Yeah. So I think before we really get into the Instagram thing, I think Instagram is kind of a unique tool, and it sort of plays on a lot of very interesting marketing things. And some of those go back to really kind of the underpinnings and psychology of marketing. And in fact, I find this whole topic to be extremely fascinating about, why we do what we do, how we do what we do. And, I think that, the general reaction to this, I think from a lot of people is they either see this as sort of like, some kind of like, evil manipulation, or they see this as completely fascinating. And I kind of fall into the fascinating part, but I think it's interesting that we kind of level set on this as we start to talk about Instagram. If you want to go to the next slide. So, I think that when you think about like as a person, as a consumer, as anything that and this doesn't just are buying decisions, these are all your decisions, is that, I think that we think that our thinking brain, the part of us that, logically, that the voice in our head is where we make our decisions, right? We think about things and we make the smartest decision based on, the logic and the facts and the things that are at the ends of our, kind of all the stuff that's on the table. But the truth of the matter is that we don't. And there's been a lot of research to really back this up. And that in this particular case, that this Harvard Business School professor, is citing 95% of the purchase decisions we make are made subconsciously, and they're driven by emotions, unconscious urges, and essentially, kind of the lower parts of our brain versus the upper parts of our brain. And then what we do is we justify those decisions based with our neocortex, with our rational thinking brain. And if you think about it, really, there's kind of like really kind of three parts to the way we think about things. You can go to the next slide, Ellie. And again, I think like we'll put this in the context of Instagram here in a second. But if you think about like at the core, right, the lizard brain, right, this is your fight or flight. This is the things basically that help keep us alive and propagate the species, right? So if you think about the kinds of things that are on Instagram around this is the things that are inciting fear, the conspiracy theories, the sexually suggestive, content that you see on Instagram that feeds that. And then you end up with, you kind of move up a level and you kind of move into more of the limbic system, right? The mammalian brain, which are essentially things that help us, create community, and then they fear some of the other things like anxiety, maternal love, anger, some of these things. I mean, they're more of a social conscious kind of a component. These are the things that, when you see dog and cat videos, it's really kind of triggering this. And then you ultimately move up into the rational brain. So and the reason that we kind of set this up and we lay this out is that when you think about making content, I think part of the content you're thinking about is which things are we appealing to? What are we putting out in the world, and what part of your brain is it touching? It's interesting because it's like if you go to the lizard brain or you go to the mammalian brain, the limbic system, is that you do not generally have a lot of like conscious control over the way those things touch you. And that this gets used a lot, I think, if you look at like infomercials. If you watch an infomercial, if you stick with it for 15, 20, 30 minutes, by the time you're done, that I would say that they have a very good chance of at least making you interested in buying the product, if they're not actually getting you to buy the product. So you can go ahead. There's a really famous book that sort of ties into these things called Influence by Robert Cialdini. And he really discusses 6 or 7, depending on how you look at it, of the triggers that influence people as they make decisions. You can go to the next slide. And this is where we're going to talk about how Instagram ties in. And those triggers are reciprocity. So when someone does something for you, that you feel an obligation to do something back for them. Consistency. So people strive for consistent behaviors, right? They like to see consistency out of people. So the same voice, same message, same look, same feel over time, that helps build trust. Consensus, essentially, this is, what's also known as social proof. So when people see a group of others doing something, that they tend to fall in line with that. So like, for instance, how that might apply to Instagram would be, if your account has a lot of followers, then therefore you must be, more trustworthy in the content that you're putting out into the world. That is one way that social proof works. Testimonials are another place that this works. So if you come on and see a third party testimonial of someone who is not you talking about something, that commands more belief and more trust than if you would say it themselves. Liking, if you're just a likable person, that is one of the triggers. Authority, do you know what you're talking about? And scarcity. So the less of something there is, the more people want it, because essentially it triggers the fear of missing out, anxiety that's within all of us. So, and I think if you think about it, as you just think about the kinds of things you experience on Instagram, people are very good at targeting these different types of influence. And by tapping into this, that will allow you, I think, to get more out of the content you create. I mean, no one is saying that you should create content specifically just to manipulate people, but I think that what you think is if you sort of tie into the ideas of what makes people sit up and take notice and pay attention, and you can just kind of put your story into one of these kind of buckets, it absolutely helps you drive more influence, and you get more out of your Instagram and really any of your marketing. Okay, with that.
All right, so we'll get into why Instagram. Sort of first and foremost, Instagram is free. It's relatively easy to get started. It's user friendly, and it's one of the easiest places to quickly build an audience. It's also great for guitar related content. It's imagery heavy, whether that be video or static, which really lends itself well to the guitar industry. Some more specific things with Instagram. One is that visual appeal and brand identity. It's very visuals focused. It's great for showing off craftsmanship, before and afters, custom builds, small details, things like that. Additionally, it has over 2 billion active users, so your chances of reaching a potential customer are pretty high. Obviously, we will get into how you can kind of narrow that down. You don't want to reach all 2 billion people necessarily, but we'll get into that as well. Engagement rates on Instagram are generally higher than other platforms. That'll be likes, shares, comments, saves, that sort of thing. And that's typically higher on Instagram. The other aspect is community building, and I think this is a really important note. Community is a huge thing, obviously, within the Looth group, within our industry. And Instagram really helps to foster that if used appropriately. You can use it to connect with musicians, guitar enthusiasts, local artists. And you can also engage with potential customers one-on-one via comment stories and DMs. Brock and I in our internal presentations will talk about using Instagram and other social to engage one-to-one with those DMs and comments directly to people, but also one-to-many with the posts that you make. So you kind of get best of both worlds there. The video and storytelling opportunities on Instagram are awesome. You can use Reels to showcase repairs or builds or even customer testimonials, demos, things like that. Instagram stories allow for quicker updates. They're only up for 24 hours. You can use them in highlights, but we'll get into that too. You can also interact a little bit more via polls and Q&As, things like that. Live videos are another great thing. Obviously, we're all here in the Looth group and we love a live video. So live video on Instagram can be a good way to engage with your followers, even if you just pop on there while you're working and give some thoughts on what you're working on that day or take questions. Some other more sales related things are the shop and booking features on Instagram. So you can sell directly on Instagram if you use Shopify and you have retail items to sell. If you're looking to have customers book with you, you can use action buttons via the platform to do that, or contact button. Cost-effective advertising. We've talked about this before, and I'm sure eventually we'll get into actually how to go in and do this, if that would be helpful. But Instagram ads allow you to target specific demographics, by location, by age, et cetera, and interests for relatively low cost. You can also run promotions for services, discounts, special offers, new items, new services. Another note is user-generated content and testimonials. So just like you would ask customers to leave a review, you can encourage customers to share their guitars once they pick them back up, or the pedal they bought, or whatever it might be, and to tag your business. You can also repost that, which helps you build trust, makes the customer feel appreciated, right? You're giving them a little bit of a shout out, and showcases your work through real experiences, real customers. Something else is the SEO and discoverability. Instagram pages typically appear, somewhere with your brand on Google search. So optimizing that and optimizing your bio with keywords and a few other things we'll get into, I think, on the next slide, to make it easier for people to find you. The last one I want to touch on is easy cross promotion. So you can link it to your Facebook. You could even have, if you're making posts on Instagram, you can have it automatically upload to both. You can slightly alter it to suit each platform. Same with TikTok. So you can cross post those. You can link off to either platform, and obviously linking to your website as well. Repurposing Instagram content is also great. Once you get over that hurdle of making a video, how can you utilize it other places as well? And I've seen, there are a few things in the chat, so let's check.
Yeah, I got those, Allie.
You got those? Okay.
I responded back to this. I think though that what we just went through, while this is kind of an early slide, and we will talk about most of these things coming up, that was a lot. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions before we kind of continue to move forward? Take that as a no. So I guess let's keep going.
One more on Instagram. You have some variety to choose from. So Reels are really what Instagram's prioritizing at the moment. They're trying to compete with TikTok, which has been a whole other roller coaster. So they're really prioritizing Reels. You'll see this with YouTube Shorts too. But coming from Instagram themselves, that's kind of where they're focusing right now. But your other options for types of content are stories posts, which would be either like a single static image or a carousel, which might include video and photo, and then live streams as well. And these are just quick examples to show you kind of the format of each of those if you're not already familiar. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about building and optimizing your profile for your audience specifically. Brock, do you want to start us out with understanding your target audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think the underlying theme of the entire account that you're building, right, needs to be that it is not about you. It's about them, right? So how do you deliver value to the people that you want to speak to in a way that gets them to engage with you not just in the moment but over the long haul. So I think that as you're starting to write, I think to sit back and think, who do you want to talk to? Who's your customer out there, right? So I mean, for instance, do you want to talk to working musicians? Do you want to talk to guitar collectors? Do you want to talk to other luthiers? I mean, who's that group that you want to reach out to? And then, of course, then you need to ask the question of how do you find those people? Like, particularly, like, let's say that you're a repair shop and you want to just focus on your local market. How do you do that? Well, there's different approaches to that. Certainly, that one way you could do that would be just create your content, and your content may go global, right? But then you can use like boosting to reach a more of a local audience, and you can use hashtags and location tags to help with that. Um, and then the other part is, again, I think that as you look at this, is like, how do you build influence? And some of that influence is going to come from outside of your local market. Allie, you want to talk about the content part of that?
Yeah. So one thing to think about here is what type of content does your audience engage with? That's going to help inform anything you do content wise, or should at least. So maybe that's before and after repairs. Maybe that's behind the scenes. They want to see, more of the tools you're using. That might be the case if you're looking to talk to other luthiers. Maybe it's educational content. Maybe it's more inspirational, motivational. It could be ASMR or other trends. Perhaps it's a younger audience, and you want to tap into some of the new things trending. Perhaps not. Showcasing your builds, so in sort of progress and then to the finished product, or maybe it's customer testimonials and spotlights on musicians. But I'd be thinking about all of those things as you're thinking about your audience and what they might want to see. And then profile essentials. So this slide is really about building and optimizing your profile for your audience. Again, you want to factor in who is your audience before you get into the actual specifics of how to do that. But you can optimize your profile for both the algorithm and for your audience's user experience. So customers and potential customers. First step is going to be choosing a recognizable and memorable username. Something that people will be able to recall, something that will come up easily in search. I like to use Gene as guitar repairman as an example, something like that where it's easy to find. Create a compelling bio and include in your bio who you are, what you do, and a call to action, whether that be to book a service or join your email list. It could be any number of things, but include some sort of action there. Include a link or links in your bio using a direct link or multiple link host. We use Linktree. Frankly, I would recommend, rather than just doing a link to your website, I would recommend using a Linktree where you can link off to additional maybe examples or testimonials and things like that. It's a little bit better of a user experience, and also you only get one link in your Instagram bio, so you might as well maximize that and use something where you can include multiple things and direct people different places. Linktree is free and also a great resource, but that's a side note. Profile picture should be your logo, your face, or a signature build that you've done, perhaps. You should also do some contemplation around whether you want to opt for a business or a creator account. There are different benefits with both. StuMac has a business account. I believe, Brock, your personal account is a creator account.
That's right. Yeah.
Um,
The short answer is you want one of those two accounts, and it's kind of a coin flip about which one you pick. But you definitely want to have one of those two.
Yeah, they'll give you different options for things to add to your profile, abilities to add shopping features, increased analytics, things like that. Another thing is to utilize the story highlights. So Instagram stories are an easy way to do content. I've done some in the past that are just as easy as like the front of our building when I'm walking in for the day, or what's going on down in manufacturing any given day. And you can use the highlights to keep those there more than the 24 they typically stay up, and to kind of categorize them and build a story that stays at the top of your page all the time. And again, the overarching thing here is think about, as you're doing all of this, think about your customer's experience, the value that it provides for them. Again, while it's giving them information about you, it is meant to serve them. All right.
So I think that when we talk about the algorithm, like one thing, and Allie will go through the points on this in a second, but I think one thing to think about, kind of a macro point, is that everything these social platforms do, right? And certainly in this case, we're talking about Instagram, but the others fall into exactly the same boat, is that they reward activities that you do, the content that you post that keeps people on the platform forever. And they also reward any kind of interaction that you can get. So if you can get someone to like a thing, to comment on a thing, to save a thing, to repost a thing, that they will give you, they'll give you the content that you're producing more attention. So they'll put it in front of more people, giving you the opportunity to reach more people. So as you make your content, that those are the things that you really want to think about. Like, for instance, like things that you may not want to say, might be like, well, that's it. It's like, so don't say things that make people want to disengage with the content. And the other is if you can hold out on whatever the key point is for a moment until you sort of hook them, that's also a good thing. Or the opposite is true, is you could set the hook right in the beginning, is I'm going to show you how to get rid of this problem. If you ever struggle with this, I'm going to show you how to make it go away. And then you pull people into the content that you create. So with that, Allie, do you want to pick up on the parts that you put in here?
Yeah. Yeah. So Instagram's algorithm is kind of this big thing. And frankly, if I saw the code that goes into it, I probably wouldn't know what that means anyway. But there are some things we know, and we know that help you get ahead with their algorithm. The first is the kind of content you post matters. So be that reels, posts, carousels, or stories, even lives. Where you prioritize and sort of the mix there can help you. Again, reels are going to be prioritized. So bonus points if you're, willing to dive into video. Short form, the videos on Instagram, they've extended the time limit a little bit, but we find that under a minute and 30 seconds still kind of ideal. Grace, yeah, under a minute 30. However, I will say, as concise as you can be and still get your point across is going to be about where you're going to want to sit. If you need 3 minutes to tell a story and it's something that's more complex, use it. If it's engaging enough and you're really putting the thought into how you can keep people engaged throughout, and you think that you can hold attention for that long and the content is essential all the way through, do that. If you can get your point across in 15 seconds, that's great. That's great too. So, again, under a minute 30, I would say is going to be where you're going to want to sit most of the time, but there will be outliers. Just try to be as concise as you can while still getting your point across. And I will say, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Obviously, a lot of jobs in guitar repair and guitar building are much more complex than something you can teach in 90 seconds. Personally, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if you maybe don't get every piece of information in there. Leave some questions to be asked, because if you leave questions kind of unanswered, you'll probably find that people ask those in the comments, and then that gives you an opportunity to engage. Optimizing your content. So you have your piece of content. What else can you add to it to help build that out? Hashtags, location tags. If you're wanting to go after primarily a local audience, use your location tag. Captions. What do you want to do? What do you want to include? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about captions in a second. But what kind of other information, maybe supplemental, maybe more of a summary, can you include in the caption that would add value? Closed captioning as well. One, it's an accessibility thing, but two, the algorithm will be able to better serve your content to other people if it knows what's being said in the video. So closed captioning is another really helpful tool. Consistency and frequency are key, and that does not mean that you need to be posting something every day. However, if you do really want to commit to growing on Instagram and building out your strategy, I would think about the amount of times, the amount of posts you think you can realistically do, and I would commit to that. Maybe it's one a week, maybe it's one every 2 weeks, maybe it's every other day. Regardless, I would kind of pick something that you think you can stick to and try to hold yourself to that. Instagram has an engagement-based ranking, so videos that receive higher engagement are going to be pushed out more in the algorithm. That would mean they're getting likes, they're getting comments, saves, shares. So you want to kind of think about, how can I, in this piece of content, in this video, in this post, whatever it may be, encourage that. Maybe that's asking a question in the caption. Maybe that's asking a question in the video itself. Maybe it's saying, caption this and having people comment that. It could be any number of things there, but really be thinking about what you can do to encourage people to share or engage in a more meaningful way than just watching it. Relevance and interest. So again, you're going to think about your audience here, but also Instagram as a platform and the users on it. Serve them with content that they're going to actually interact with. If it's, a screenshot from something, maybe it's not going to be so interesting. If it's, a photo of something really cool you had in your shop, that's going to be a little more appealing, right? Keywords and hashtags, use these both in your content as well as in your profile. They do still matter. I will say keywords and hashtags have kind of shifted. They're still helpful for search. They're still helpful for connecting you with audience members, but they have kind of shifted and have become really important in helping the algorithm to identify what type of content a piece is and to categorize it and serve it to the right people. So yes, they matter. They matter for maybe slightly different reasons than they originally would have. But do some looking around, see what hashtags keep coming up and the things you're interested in, the things people you would like to have as customers or commenting on. And the last one is tap into other people's large audiences. Basically collaborate, whether that be collaborative posts or tagging, your friend or your customer in a post about their work, about the work you did on their instrument or whatever that may be. See how you can kind of work together and share your audience with one another. You want me to keep going, Brock?
What's that?
You want me to keep going, Brock?
Yeah, go ahead.
So content strategy for guitar businesses on Instagram. The first thing is everything is content. I can't overstate this. It doesn't have to be some big complex thing. It does not have to be, scripted or this super formal thing that you're doing. It can be very simple. Could be as simple as just, filming yourself, putting a pick guard back on. I would say don't overthink it and don't get overwhelmed by the idea that it has to be some crazy production. Storytelling, and this is a big point. Everything is a story. Show the process, the passion. Experimentation is also going to be a big part of success. We have a good amount of followers on our account. Not every video is a hit, right? But you kind of got to test new things out and you learn from them, whether what you learned was, okay, well, we're not going to do that again, or you learn, okay, that did well. Maybe we can use that formula going forward and kind of build that out. Balance your posts. So if you don't want to do all video, you don't have the capacity to do all video, those sorts of things, you can do a mix. Find a mix that works for you. Maybe it's reels and static images on stories. Maybe you do live sessions every once in a while. As I touched on a little bit earlier, highlights can be really helpful. Again, stories expire after 24 hours. So you can save those and kind of build a story that will last with them via the highlight. It is a great way to categorize things. You can also repost any reels or posts you make to the story and include them there to help add those in as part of whatever story you're trying to tell in your highlights. Hashtags and geotags are super helpful for visibility. I have a few examples here, but there are any number that you could use. Maybe kind of poke around in them and see which ones you think might be a good fit. Encourage interactions and user-generated content. That might be directly from your customers. That might be from online community members. Some other tactics for success, and I kind of touched on the closed captioning, but think about the audio you're using. If it's really satisfying shop sounds, maybe you just use the original sounds as the audio, or maybe you use a song that heavily features guitar. Maybe you even record a little bit with the guitar you're working on in the video, or the guitar you're building in the video, and that's the audio for it. But do some thinking about that. You can also use trending audios, which is going to help you reach a wider audience, but might not be as fitting or might not feel as authentic to you. And then best practices for captions and for engagement. So long captions versus short captions, you'll get opinions on both. Brock and I have differing opinions on either or. Neither's really right or wrong. I think you find what works for you. For example, Brock likes to tell a story in the caption. So on his posts, he'll write a long caption, kind of explaining things and really telling a story there. I tend to use the video as the story, and we'll keep the caption short and brief in hopes of encouraging some more engagement in the comments, people to ask more questions, things like that. Both work, both have different benefits and drawbacks. I would just kind of look at some captions that are out there and see which feels right to you, which feels right to the story you're trying to tell. Both. Slow songs work better for you? Interesting.
I think that, again, I think if we kind of back up and we look at the macro of this, is that what we're doing here is we're telling a story, and we have a lot of tools at our disposal in telling the story, right? We've got the video component itself, right? So what are you seeing? And then you've got the audio component. What are you hearing, right? So that hearing could be hearing you work, maybe hearing you work with a music overlay, maybe hearing you talk about the work while you're doing it. Maybe you're doing a talking head and you're talking to the person that you're looking at. So all that's part of the story, right? It's about how to deliver the story in a way that you think is going to be the most engaging. And then the caption is a big part of this too. And again, this is coming back to what Allie and I talk about long versus short captions. If you can nail it, a short caption is great. But what I find is most people can't, is that short captions they just look lazy to me in most cases, right? They don't look like you're really telling much of a story. So I think in my mind, a longer caption telling people what it is that you want them to see, what it is that you want them to think, and what it is you want them to do as a result of that content you've just shown them above, makes a lot of sense. But I've seen it done well with short. It's just, like I said, I think it's harder. So anyway, I think that, like I said, when you back out and look at this, I think it's really just about, these are the tools at your disposal to tell a story.
Regardless, long or short, captions should attempt to spark conversation, create connection, and or tell a story. Also include a call to action of some variety, whether that be what are your thoughts, comment below, um, check out link in bio for new service options or for more info on this new build. Include something like that. It could be encouraging DMs, et cetera, et cetera. But you can utilize Instagram's tools for that. Again, the link in bio, DM me for, X thing, any number of things. And then responding to comments and messages to boost visibility. And this goes for comments on both your own account and community members' accounts. Instagram they're, again, really prioritizing engagement. So what they like to see is that you are an engaged member of some community within the platform. So if you're actively commenting on other community members' accounts, it takes note of that. It will kind of give that back to you. It's a little bit of a karma thing. Don't just expect for your stuff to be seen and people to be engaging with you and not engage back. You want to talk a little bit about this, Brock?
Sure. So, I think that, when you look at growing your audience, right? I mean, it's like, to be an active member of the community is a big help, right? So this doesn't mean like just operating in your own little world of your own Instagram account, but also getting out into the world and being social in a social platform and starting conversations on other people's channels, leaving comments, sharing your opinions. I think all of that helps build your authority of your own account because that just creates more opportunities for people to come back and see who you are and what you're all about. I think that a lot of times, when we talk to people that there's always this notion that they want to connect sales to the activities that they're doing. Well, I've been posting on Instagram for 6 months and I haven't seen any sales. Well, how do you know? How do you know you haven't seen any sales, right? Because if you think about it, like all of these things that you do, that they all contribute to the idea of what somebody has about you and your business. So it's hard to really say this is the thing that made somebody somebody buy or not buy or, come into your shop or not. I think it's something that you kind of have to get out of that kind of thinking. Cross promoting all of your content on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. That's always a good opportunity. I mean, it's a make once and share multiple ways. Every one of those platforms is different. YouTube, I think we could talk about YouTube just as its own thing standalone. That may be the biggest opportunity I think of all, but it's harder than Instagram. YouTube is a tougher place to build audience on, but it's an evergreen audience. So it's like, once you build it, it's kind of there forever. And then the other thing, and this is a really, really big point, is when you find something that is working, boost it. So what that means is that you go on and the way you interact with this is to go on your Instagram account on your computer, and then you go in and you boost it. And essentially what you're doing is you're creating a little ad, and you could probably put somewhere between like $2 a day and $5 a day on a post that's doing well, and it will expose that post to more people. And the great part about this is you get to tell Instagram who you want to target. So, if you want to target different people than who the algorithm thinks you want to target, this is your opportunity to tell them that, and that this is really a key, I think, to make an Instagram work for business. And it doesn't cost a lot of money. It costs some money, but it doesn't cost a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm curious. Has anyone boosted anything before? And if not, would us kind of showing you how to do that and change your settings and all of that be helpful?
I've boosted things before, and I did pretty well with it last summer, but then it seemed to kind of run its course by the fall. I'm not sure.
Were you running the same piece of content or the same post for a long period of time, or did you switch it up?
I switched it up.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like tinker with the audiences. So it's not, don't just pick one audience and just keep running ads to that one audience. Have different ads and different audiences. And that's a piece of it as well.
The question about how long you should keep a meta ad or boosted post running. You are right. It'll take a little bit for it to ramp up. Typically they'll kind of find, a home within whatever audience you've set after a little while, and then eventually that will exhaust. I will say, I don't really have a perfect recommendation for you on when that's going to exhaust itself. I think it's going to depend on the size of the audience you're targeting. It's going to depend on what other pieces of content you're running at the same time. There's a number of factors that go in. I would just say keep an eye on the results that you're getting from it. When you see the results taper off, pause it. You can always run it again a while later. You can set a price in your head, and if I'm paying over this amount per click, I'm gonna pause it for a while. And you can always come back to it.
What I would do is set your initial one for a week, and then look at what your cost of engagement is, and then that is kind of going to be a barometer for how well it's quote working, because you'll see some that'll be like your cost of engagement is 6 cents, and then another one will come in and say it's like 26 cents. Well, the 6 cent one does better, from that. The other thing you can do, and again, it isn't necessarily one is better than the other, it's just comparatively speaking, the 6 cent one is better than the 26 cent. The other thing you can do is let a piece of content that has worked well for you let it rest for a while, and then bring it back. So you could bring back a piece of content that maybe you did 2 years ago that was very successful, boost it again in the future, and that'll expose your site, your account to more people who maybe have never seen you before. So again, I think all of this is take what's working well organically and look at boosting it. Now, again, if you're struggling and you're like, well, I tried that and it didn't work, I think then something about that post made it work, right? Like when it worked organically, it was working, So I think then the trick is finding the right people to put it in front of. Now, there's the one thing that Instagram will do is it will sort of say, hey, like, here's who we recommend to put this in front of. That's a pretty good group to start with. But I think a lot of times that you may have sort of a better sense for who you really want to talk to, and then go set that targeting. The other thing to think about with this is that not all the targeting has to be guitar related. Like, who are your customers? Like, if you're in an area where all of your customers are doctors, dentists, and lawyers, maybe what you ought to do is target doctors, dentists, and lawyers, and then also people that are like way into guitar. Those might be the kinds of things that would end up helping you. Now, in those scenarios, not like in that particular scenario, you may end up paying more on a cost per click basis to get the right kind of people to connect with you than just a lot of people. So again, it all comes back to kind of what your goals are. But we found this to be a really, really important component to helping grow your Instagram channel, but also too is helping find the right kind of people to talk to.
Hey, it's Rick from Austin Mics. I have an input on that. One time we marketed to makers rather than guitar players or musicians or whatever. We put makers out there, and we had, no joke, like 90% of the people who responded were women, whereas normal guitar players, technical electronics people, about 95% were men. So even just picking the right target, even in your keyword targeting and everything like that, a little bit outside of what you think your normal business is a huge deal.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. 100%. Like, for instance, like if you just like, let's say for instance, that you've got a product and you're trying to put that product out into the world, and you just want a lot of people out there talking about your product. You're not necessarily looking for customers. Look for people that are in guitar culture, right? So like, for instance, if you look at, Argentina, Brazil, places like that, they're bananas about guitars. and that they're all over social media. So you will get a lot of people very, very quickly, not just following you, but also engaging with your content. That could be a strategy as well. So yeah, so you're right. So, and I think, like I said, tinker with your audiences. Because, like I said, what looks like it's not working might work if you just change the audience.
Buck, to answer your question, the averages I've kind of seen are like between 40 to 70 cents per click. However, I've seen it as low as a couple cents and I've seen it as high as a couple bucks. What a good target price is going to be is also going to depend pretty significantly on what you're requesting of the person viewing the boosted post, right? Are you asking them to just click a link? Are you asking them to go to your website? What's your CTA? That's going to play a factor, and your audience is going to have another big impact on that. So
for me, when I boost things, I think success looks like 2 cents to 12 cents, somewhere in that range. So if you're in there, I think, again, this is just for Instagram. This isn't trying to make sales. So that's another thing entirely. So like, for instance, I see in the comments, the folks from String Plucker who was saying, keep an eye on ROAS and clicks. In a lot of cases, there is no ROAS, right? There is no return on ad spend because there's no associated, transaction that comes with that. That's another animal entirely. That's paid advertising. And that's a whole separate conversation, right? About how to drive sales with, online ads, and Instagram is part of that. And we do that too. But this is kind of more just towards the Instagram, the boosting of the content itself through Instagram. What else do we have? Doctors, dentists, lawyers make the best customers. They do.
But the worst employees. Sorry.
Probably. Yeah. Well, they might not make the best customers in terms of, like, they're hard to control. But yes, I get them. They get them.
No, it's just when you visit them, you're not nothing good's happening when they're your employee.
Yeah.
Or employer, I should say.
Yeah. Okay, Allie, I didn't mean to knock this thing off the rails. Do you want to?
Oh, yeah, you're good. Converting followers into customers. So there are a few things you can do here. One is linking to an appointment system. If that's on your website, include that in the link tree or as your link in bio. DM strategy, and there are ways you can automate this a little bit, but turning DM inquiries into bookings, using Instagram to build out your email list and capture email addresses, using customer reviews and testimonials to build trust and kind of move people along to the point that they make a purchase or make an appointment. And another thing is give till it hurts, share info. This has kind of been StuMac's strategy with content from the beginning. And we have found that giving out information never takes a customer from us, from anyone that we work with. Giving information builds that trust. If you give a little bit for free, people tend to be like, okay, well, if this is what they're giving me now, like, what happens if I buy into this? Or, what other information is out there? So that's kind of a general philosophy on all of this, and on the content that you're posting is don't be afraid to share information. It's not going to take away from you. It's going to realistically build trust and build your authority.
Yeah, there's I know I've had this conversation like 1,000 times with people about the fact that, well, if I give everything away, why will people pay me for it? And that the reality of it is they'll pay you for it because really kind of one of two things. One is you're not going to give it away in one big, here's how to do it from A to Z. You're going to give away a little bit here and a little bit here and a little bit here. And then it's up to the consumer of this information to stitch it all together. And that's tough. That's not necessarily an easy thing to do. And the other thing that ends up happening is all you're really doing is convincing people that you know what you're doing. And so then they come to you to then get it from you. So I think that, like I said, there's never been a scenario where I've worked on $50 million products, information products, and they all give everything away. And it's remarkable about how well it works. I think this is one of the magic things that's helped StuMac get to where it is. And I don't know that anybody intended for that to happen when they got into it, but I think that it's really been a key part of what's made StuMac successful over the years.
Yeah, another thing too to keep in mind is especially for, players, who really don't know what they're doing but are interested in what you do and what goes on with their instrument and all of that. I like to use an example from my own self, but I took a setup class a couple of years ago, and my main takeaway from the setup class was how much I don't know and how much harder it is than I had ever realized. Um, so if anything, they got more customers out of us in the class because we were sitting there all like, oh my God, this took us like 8 hours to do. How do you do this in as little time as you do? We were amazed. So, they didn't lose any customers in that, in sharing that information or teaching us anything. Understanding Instagram analytics. So what matters and what should you pay attention to? Again, your goals are going to alter this a little bit, but keep an eye on engagement, like shares, comments, saves, and your engagement rate. What sort of things are people engaging with? What sort of things are they really not? That'll help inform your content strategy. Measuring reach and impressions, how far your content spreads. Maybe you have one video that really takes off and you reach all these new people, and that can help you find sort of a formula for another video you might want to do. Maybe, it was a one-off thing, and, you can kind of learn different things from that, but keep an eye on the reach and impressions. Follower growth trends too. Do you see a big spike? Do you see a big dip? That can help it, advise you on what's working and what's not. And then optimizing, use all of that to optimize your strategy, essentially. Anything else on analytics from you, Brock?
No, actually, I'd like to get to the next slide where we can talk about a couple of accounts that we think are doing it pretty well.
Yep.
Do you want to do this? You want me to do it?
Either way.
So that Calamar had asked a question, like he said, would love to see some examples of new small accounts that have blown up. I think a great example is Guitar Repairland. So if you look at that, Allie, do you have a way of pulling this up and still share your screen while that's happening?
Let's find out.
We're not seeing it if it came up.
Are you seeing it now?
No. Can you share your whole window versus the?
Yeah, let me stop and let me share again. No, I can't, but I can. Oh, wait. Can I do my entire screen? Yes. Okay. 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 Here we go.
Okay. So one of the things, this is a great account, and I think that this has got a lot of interesting things happening here. So that this account is at 145,000 followers, and I'm not entirely sure how long it's been around, but he has 87 posts. 87 postings grew to 145,000. And that it really kind of, I think, encapsulates almost everything we've been talking about here. I mean, so like there's a very strong visual and audio branding about what he has put together. He tells a story in a very certain way, and he sticks with it very consistently. And it's fun and interesting and novel, and it's it might not be for everybody, but it's absolutely memorable. And I think that's part of what makes it work. The other is it's lighthearted and fun, and it has a very high shareability thing. I mean, multiple people have sent me this. And so it clearly is making a big reach. This is a good one to look at. And like I said, I wouldn't just go copy what he's done, but I think it does prove at the point of like you can blow up with a small account, and as
Yeah, and I think.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, jump in. Go for
it. The thing with this account in particular is there's some personality to it. I think that more traditional advertising used to be, brands, you wanted to be a little more buttoned up, you wanted to be a little more formal. And I think that this is a good example of how showing off the personality, being a little goofy, maybe not taking it so seriously, can be a tactic for you. If that's how you are, if that's authentic to you, then that can really pay off. If you're a more serious person, then maybe ASMR or something else might suit you better. But social media has really changed how marketing looks. And I think that one of the big things that's happened with that is that personality and having a little fun and kind of playing around is not such a bad thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think Bo's account is another one that kind of falls into that. I mean, it's like, a lot of his personality kind of really comes through in that. And I think that there's, Allie and I were talking about it yesterday, is that, I can be looking at an Instagram scroll and I see a Bo post come and I know it's his post without any audio on. I mean, I can feel it. There's this sort of a vibe about it. And I think that part of this is you need to find what that visual voice is, for your own account, and then, like I said, and find it and sort of stay with it so you build that consistency over time.
Yep.
And then
You want me to talk about your account, Brock?
I shouldn't talk about my own account.
Yeah, Brock's account is another example I really like. Brock typically does the more ASMR style, so it's lots of shop sounds, lots of close-up detail work. Lots of machinery going on, that sort of thing, tools at work. And Brock's account is another account that is pretty immediately recognizable to me. When I'm scrolling and I see a post, I know it's Brock's. Typically I do know in advance, so I might be biased on that one. But something that's identifiable is sort of visually branded to whatever you're trying to put out in the world. You want to make that clear, so when people are scrolling, before they even watch the full video or before they take a second to look at the username in the top corner, they know it's you. And that's not going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen immediately with one video. But if you're consistent with that, the look and the feel of what you're putting out there, that will build over time and it will become identifiable.
Yep. And then I will say too, in the building of my account, that collabs has been another really, really, really important component of this. And I think that that's something that you guys could all tap into as well. I mean, certainly there's collabing with StuMac opportunities, but there's other ones out there too. I mean, it's like, how many of your 3D printing, that is an insatiable, marketplace right now. And I think that there's lots of people that you could potentially collab with in the 3D printing world.
Yeah. And then I've got some other examples here. I think my main point with this is you don't just have to take examples from your peers. Look at what else is out there and what sort of appeals to you, what other things you might be able to replicate and learn from. So there's some really great examples here. One I really liked, I love jewelry, big gold jewelry girl, particularly vintage. So this was a good example. Maybe. Let me try. Oh, I need to present it to get to it, don't I? Bear with me, guys. But there we go. For repair setting, this is a pretty
Our
good
goldsmith
example.
noticed that the gold wire strings of the violin are wrapped up at the top and easily catch on things and are just kind of unnecessarily long. So she took the piece to the laser welder to laser the back of the violin to keep the strings in place so that she could remove the catchy ends. Now it's time to polish the piece. She can't use the big polishing lathe because it would catch the chain attaching the violin to the case and rip it out, so she uses mini polishing wheels instead for more precise work. After cleaning it in the ultrasonic, this unique charm is ready to find a music lover to cherish it for another lifetime. Let's refurbish this.
So that might be an example of some sort of formula you could follow with repair. Again, like nothing that happened in that video was particularly interesting, right? Like she polished it, she fixed up a couple things. But if I'm into that sort of thing, as you would hope your customers would be into repair or building or whatever it may be, it's appealing, right? So it doesn't have to be anything super complex or super interesting. You don't need to be like, making world altering, revelations or anything. I've got some other examples in here. Do we want to look at some more examples, or do we want to jump to Q&A? I know we're a little late here.
Yeah, we're running a little late. Let's just jump to Q&A.
Okay. And I'm going to send this to Ian and Grace, so you guys will have this in their hyperlink.
This will get attached.
Yep. Does anyone have any questions? I know we kind of threw a lot at you here today. I do have boosting posts written down as something that we might want to cover separately. If there's anything else in here that you would like to see more in depth, that would also be helpful to know. Those are my questions, but.
Everybody's shy.
So,
Yeah, well, we also threw a whole bunch at you, so.
yeah.
No, they're just shy. I'll start calling on people.
What?
If you don't ask a question, I'm calling on you.
Ian, you're the teacher I would have been scared of in school.
Max, ask your question.
I have a question. No, I see that a lot of the stuff I do a little bit of repair, mostly building, and the repair stuff seems to track more usually. And then when you go see, who the followers are and the people that subscribe and stuff, it's all just guitar people, as in guitar people, not guitar players, but like, builders and repairers, and probably will eventually will run out of those and start getting the guitar buyers. But it is, I feel like it's a harder target to reach, which, my Instagram is slowly, steady, growing, but nothing that, got like a few double-digit 1,000 views on some posts, but not. It's usually mostly like.
I would say that I wouldn't worry about the guitar people being the majority of the people that are following you. I think that if you look at your audience as a whole, that it might be 20-1 in terms of who might buy a guitar versus who else is interested in the craft, right? So it doesn't take a lot of them to buy up probably everything you can make for the year. I think the builder one almost in some ways I think it's easier, right? Because your audience could potentially be worldwide, right? You could get somebody anywhere to buy a guitar from you, and that if you I don't know how you build. Like, I don't know if you're building on commission or building on spec and then selling, but like if somebody can watch a guitar come together, so you're building these guitars, they're getting to see all the little parts. And then if you create highlights and like name them, Tom Sands does a great job of this. If you go to his account, he will like name his guitars. I'm not suggesting you name them, but the way he makes them work, they kind of fit into a highlight. And then you can go into the highlights and watch the whole guitar come to life. And to me, it's like, this is the opportunity to really tell a story. You're telling a story visually, but then you're also, I think, telling the story in the captions of like what you're doing and why it matters and why taking time, to sweat the details, is an important part of, a luthier built instrument, right? So that story is what people are buying versus buying a Merton, Taylor, Gibson, Fender, whatever acoustic guitar that they've got their mind on. So to me, it's like I think it's a good opportunity, but I wouldn't sweat the fact that you're getting a lot more builders than you're getting buyers, because I don't know what you make a year, 10, 12, 20. It doesn't take a lot of folks to buy those guitars out.
Can I offer one suggestion for getting followers that are appropriate? If you go to somebody that you're interested in, you can see who they follow, and you can also see who follows them. So if there's like a player that you're interested in, for me, like it's like Gypsy Jazz players, I'll look for the player and then I'll go to their page and then just start. It's pretty gross, but I'll just start following the people who follow them, and that's why I have like 3,000 followers and I'm following 6,000 people, but I have had people engage with me because of that, and it does seem to, you're kind of just directly targeting those people and showing some interest in what they're doing, even though it's totally bogus and you're not actually that interested. But it has worked for having a lot more engagement for me.
Yeah. I would say if there's somebody like a player that you want to target, go to their Instagram and just start interacting with them. We don't try to sell them a guitar, just interact with the content they're posting, and then they'll start to pay attention to who you are.
Yeah, and
It
that's
also-
from a. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ian.
Oh, I was just going to say it also probably runs the slim chance of you getting into their algorithm. Like if you're interacting with them, they might just happen across your post and go, "Oh, wow, gypsy jazz guitar guy. Look at that."
I mean, I'm less sure that I'm going to sell a guitar to the famous player than maybe to the person who, the guy who's following the famous player is why I'm going into the famous player's followers and following those people who are hopefully rich lawyers is the goal. So.
Yeah. I just want to say, to some extent, that's sort of a community building thing, right? If there's someone where you're like, okay, I like what they're doing, or, the people who are following them might like what I'm doing, I don't think it's entirely bogus. That is part of the whole community building thing. And, people do that in person too, when you're at a concert and, you go up and say, hey, I love the show or whatever. So, that kind of, I think, plays into the community of it all.
When I ask about the keywording, I don't really get. It's kind of a lot of work to me to do it, and then I don't really see. Like if I tag, I don't know, Portland, Maine, gypsy jazz guitar, like I don't really know what that's going to get me. Is somebody searching like gypsy jazz guitar luthier? I feel like it's just sort of like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like, I just don't see how the mechanism of how that's going to bring additional followers for the amount of work that it seems to take. But
yeah, depending on how niche it is, if it's like a hashtag that like 2 people follow, you're probably not going to see much on that. If it's a bigger, hashtag with a greater following, you might, honestly, somewhere in the middle is kind of ideal, because if there are too many people following it, it gets overloaded, you get buried. If there are not enough, then nobody sees it. And I would say kind of find a few that, 3 to 5 is perfectly fine. Find a few that work and that you do seem to see some benefit from. Just copy and paste them into like your notes app or something and post them in the comments when you make a post. Makes it a little easier. Obviously, if one isn't relevant to a specific thing, take it out or whatever, but it's pretty easy to just copy and paste those in. Again, hashtags and keywords are also not so much now as they used to be for your audience as they are for the algorithm and helping to categorize your content.
Yep.
So even if you're not seeing it, they do play a factor. You just might not be seeing it because it's in some magical code world happening, but.
Yep. Yeah,
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Refers to my comment earlier in the chat. I'm curious about the question about website versus Instagram. I've never had a website and I don't really need one, but I also don't sell merchandise. Are other people doing this? Is Instagram or other social media ever going to replace or kind of muscle out a website for
No, I
certain
don't think
people?
so. I don't think so. But I do think, like, for instance, I mean, if you're kind of a small business and you don't have, either the coding chops, or you don't want to invest in what it takes to have somebody professionally make you a website, one that looks nice and works well and everything, the social platforms, particularly Instagram, is a great place to go. I mean, it's like, it's kind of all I have. But I will say this, is that there are some downsides. The one downside is the fact that it's a sandbox you don't own.
Right.
So you don't, that
If
if
it disappears, then I have to.
yeah,
Right.
you got nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's bad. That's,
Right.
the
Right.
other is there's, I think when it comes to like business and particularly transacting, that email is perhaps the most important thing that you can do, and really without somewhere to collect those email addresses, and I haven't had much success doing that on Instagram.
Right.
That you're really not going to collect any substantial number of emails. So you need somewhere to send people to grab an email from them. And that this is a place where I think reciprocity really helps. Is that could be like, have a question, send it my way. Or, it's like, here are my top tips for knowing whether or not you need a setup or whatever, right? I mean, you can just come up with lots of ideas of ways to get people's email addresses. But I think that's an important part of what the website will do for you too. So I think you want the ownable space.
Yeah, my
But
other business, I have a website I built with Wix, and it definitely serves a purpose there, but it's a different business. So.
yeah, yeah. So, and even that, I mean, even with those builders, I mean, there's still investment costs. I mean, getting decent photography, and there's just and then of course the cost of ownership, just about the amount of time it takes you to continue to update it. It's a
Right. Okay. Thanks.
sure.
Al, I'd like to pop in on the website thing. Your website is the only place like online where there are no conflicted interests with your own self. Like everything that Instagram is doing, in addition to whether or not it goes away or not, they're about keeping people on their site looking at everybody else's stuff. Your website is the place where everybody's only going to look at your stuff.
True.
So,
Yep. That's a good point.
I was going to ask, I'm sorry I missed 90% of the this episode, but did you get into regional specific market in terms of Instagram? Is there do they factor that in at all?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, again, I think that what the trick to that is, I think, is to find something that you can make work in a larger audience and then boost it to a local audience. That is probably the way to make Instagram work in a local market.
So they actually offer like Google AdWords do, they can offer your boost for a region. Okay, that's the key.
Yeah,
That's
you can get pretty specific with it.
Right. Okay, cool. I didn't know you could do that.
Yep. It sounds like that it might be helpful to do sort of a actual specifics of boosting, like maybe when we go through and do an example post or something.
yes, especially with the how if anybody's using the Facebook Meta, the
Oh, that's a nightmare.
overall thing, like because it seems like it changes all the time. But if you could go over that, I mean, that'd be a game changer. So a lot of people here probably are running multiple accounts and trying to do it through that Meta
Yeah, the
Central
Meta
or
one
whatever.
we could do too. That one is boosting is a whole lot easier than that. That one does change all the time and kind of moves stuff around and yada yada. It's not a fun time, but it is doable. We could get into that as well, but they are two separate things. And I'd say boosting is to be,
Well, they kind of
start.
aren't, right? I mean, because on the one hand, like when you boost from your page, from your Instagram page, that's really just an interface laying over top of the business manager. So all that stuff you're going in there and picking, it's still going into the Meta Business Manager. So then if you go and you log into your business manager, that that ad will still be there too. So it's just that the business manager is much more of like a professional kind of tool, and it takes the learning curve on that is I wouldn't say is substantial, but it takes a minute to figure out.
Yeah, you got to be on a desktop. You got to,
yeah,
you got to find your way around.
Yeah, it's much more confusing versus the boosting thing is very, I think, consumer friendly. Yeah. Hey, one thing that we didn't mention, but I should mention is I think it's very important that you look at a creator account or a business account. But when you choose those, you are going to be greatly limited in the music selections that you can put on your posts. So just kind of keep that in mind. So what we do,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say what we do is we have royalty-free license libraries that we just subscribe to, and then we just use music out of those, which have almost anything you can imagine in terms of the type of music, but they won't be like popular or recognized songs that are kind of out now.
Most of those have too much lurid content for business anyway, as I found out.
Yeah. You got to be careful what you're using.
The creator account, you can use good music, like Jimi Hendrix or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a creator account, and that's why I use that, because I prefer to have like good, popular, awesome classic music than.
Well, yeah, and then the other thing to think about that on that too is that once you do that, once you put those kinds of songs on there, you can't boost them. They won't let you boost. They won't let you. They won't let you run the ad with any of those kind of songs on it. Which not a problem. It's just just think about that as you're making your content.
Yeah, a couple quick things on boosting. Going with what Brock was saying is like I've had a reel that did pretty well, but it had a pop song on it. So I had to take the pop song off and I put on license free stuff to boost it. And that worked pretty well. But I think it was also mentioned earlier in the presentation, do not boost from your iPhone because it costs money. Boost from your desktop computer, your laptop computer.
Yep.
Yeah, that is 100% correct. Yeah, boost from your desktop. Apple and Meta are in a little bit of a tiff with one another, and Apple's taking a chunk when you boost from your phone.
Side note too, Apple's doing the same thing with Patreon, so don't sign up for Looth Group through your iPhone either. If you need help figuring that out, my email is ian.davlin@gmail.com because it's a lot more. It's not a little bit.
Yeah, it's like 30%. Yeah,
It's like it takes an $11 membership and makes it whatever that is plus 11. Oh, what do you think? Should we put a pin in it?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you,
You
everybody.
guys, that was great. And I've been, Looth Group started on Instagram and there was all kinds of stuff. I thought I was pretty good at Instagram. I'm not. So thanks for sharing all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to think about, but I think, picking and choosing a few things that you can, that you're excited about to start working on can be, good first steps. Do it all tomorrow,
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for doing this.